So a 2024 contested election is a hypothetical, but with each passing minute, it's starting to feel less like a stretch. So who better to discuss this with than somebody who studies this for a living? Notre Dame Law School professor and election law expert Derek Muller joins us now. Derek, great to see you again. There are two different scenarios of how this could play out, depending on when President Biden drops out. What happens if he drops out before the Democratic National Convention, which is scheduled to start on August 19th?
Right, so if he drops out before, it's actually worth thinking about another deadline, which is August 1st, because the Democratic National Committee has suggested they're thinking about a virtual roll call. So this might actually accelerate the timeline. But regardless, if he drops out, all of his delegates, 99% of the delegates right now are pledged to him. They're free to vote their conscience. And so it's a question of whether or not he endorses somebody. If he does, obviously that will carry great sway. If he doesn't, then it's a sort of a free-for-all. And a majority of the delegates, there's around 4,000 delegates, takes a majority to get elected. If you don't have a majority, we go to a second and subsequent ballot, and we keep going until a majority of delegates choose their nominee.
And do the contenders get up and give speeches? How does this selection and voting process work at the convention?
Yeah, so again, we haven't seen this since the 50s. So I assume if a candidate drops out, we would see some opportunity for the candidates to present themselves and make an argument. Again, assuming it's held in Chicago, not in a virtual convention. Typically, the nominee sort of gives the keynote on the last day, right? There's sort of a coronation. We already expect them to have won the candidacy. But I assume the Democrats would change the rules and say, if you have put forward your name as a candidate, we'll give you an opportunity to speak before the convention, before that first round of voting takes place, try to campaign and politic, and then we'll see what happens.
So what happens? I don't think this doesn't sound like this is even a likely scenario, because there is so much intense pressure on President Biden, both publicly and privately, to make a decision soon. But what if, God forbid, there was something that led him to drop out or pull out of the race after the convention?
Well, this is extremely complicated and problematic, because when you submit those names, once you have a nominee, you submit your name to the Secretary of State in each of the states. Each of those states, each of the 50 states in the District of Columbia, have separate rules about when you can replace a candidate. Some allow you to do so freely. Others say it has to be only on condition of death. Others don't have any rules at all. And then states start printing ballots, and you can't unprint those ballots once they're in voters' hands and they start casting them by absentee or military and overseas voters. So it becomes a very messy process of, do Democrats just say, we'll stick with it and hope that the electors in December, our presidential electors, will vote for the right candidate? Do we try to swap names? Do we hope the 25th Amendment kicks in and the vice president becomes the president, and we'll just choose somebody else at the back end as the vice president after January 20th? It becomes a dramatically more complicated affair after the convention.
Okay, so this really needs to be settled really before August 1st, when this virtual roll call takes place. Why is there a virtual roll call?
So Ohio had a ballot access deadline of August 7th. For a long period of time. It warned Democrats that their convention at the end of August was going to be out of compliance. Ohio amended its law, but it amended its law a little bit later than Democrats would have liked. The law doesn't take effect until September 1st. That would let them put their... There's a gap between August 7th and September 1st where Democrats are technically out of compliance in the state of Ohio.
Right, but,
so Democrats and
why are delegates are complaining and saying they're being rushed to decide sooner than the convention starts? I mean, the convention starts August 19th. Why do they all have to start giving their votes on August 1st?
Right. So they're worried that because there's a gap now, on August 7th, they will be out of compliance and their candidate's ineligible. They're worried there's going to be litigation, that some judge might say you're ineligible, and then you have the sort of 3.5 week period before September 1st. So I think that's not a strong legal claim. Again, by September 1st, the Secretary of State is going to say you're on the ballot, but it certainly opens itself up to chaos. And this is one reason Democrats a month ago were planning for this contingency.
Like we don't have a little bit of chaos going on right now? I mean, the whole thing feels chaotic. Derek Muller, I think we'll probably be talking to you a lot in the coming weeks. Really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.